You can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. Maya Angelou. Boredom is one of the strongest motivators in my life. It's a weird kind of fuel, but every time I get bored enough, I end up doing something extravagant. Case in point, my latest personal project, Bertha. Bertha is a 2008 iMac. I found it at a thrift store 2 years ago. She's big, she's bulky, and now she's reborn as a music visualizer and speaker system. This video shows how I gave a 17-year-old piece of tech a second life. I've always had a thing for computers. The first one I ever used was a translucent Apple G3. Those colorful see-through beauties. I was in first grade, still learning English since Spanish was my first language, and found out the school had a computer lab, but first graders could only go in on Tuesdays during lunch because, I don't know, they thought we'd break them or something. Every single Tuesday I was there. At first, I didn't know what I was doing, probably just clicking around cluelessly, but eventually I figured out how to play games. I was hooked. Of course, owning one of those computers myself, not even in the realm of possibility. 1, I didn't even know that was a thing normal people could do. 2, we were broke. But then, when I was 8, my mom surprised me with my first laptop, an HP Pavilion, and honestly, I didn't know what to do with it. The spark I had from the G3 days kind of fizzled, and I mostly just used it for school. Then I found out about Steam. I downloaded Team Fortress 2, and boom, the spark was back. I became that nerd. When I turned 18, I built my first PC. At 20, my mom blessed me with the MacBook Pro before I graduated college. I appreciated the gesture, but truth be told, I've always been a Windows kind of guy. Mac OS just doesn't vibe with me anymore. Using it felt like trying to write with my non-dominant hand. One of the first jobs post-college was in IT, and that's where I really leveled up my skills. Started speccing hard into the tech wizard skill tree. Use those skills for, let's say, morally gray purposes. One of which resulted in me acquiring a new HP Mini Desk Elite for free. Fast forward to 2023, I'm digging through a thrift store in Highland Park, and I spot this iMac. Big old chunky thing. I figured I could turn it into a monitor for my setup. Easy, classic project. But once I got it home and booted it up, reality hit. Turns out only the newer iMacs, newer than this one, can be used as external displays. This one, no dice. And with the ancient Mac OS it was running, I said, man, fuck this. And I tossed it in my garage to collect dust for 2 years until boredom struck again. I randomly had the idea to get an oscilloscope for my main PC build. Not for anything technical, just so my rig would look more sci-fi, like the back computer or something. Turns out the newer ones cost like $500, and that was a hard no. So I thought, what can I do with this nerdy urge, but for free? Enter Bertha, who had been waiting for me in the garage like patience on a monument. I pulled her out, gave her a bath, and wiped off 2 years of dust and regret, and stared at her like, alright girl, what can we do with you? I went online looking for ideas, and stumbled into this rabbit hole of nerds. Beautiful, glorious nerds who revive old iMacs by installing Linux on them. Just straight up giving these forgotten machines a second shot at life. We live in this weird cycle where anything that isn't new gets tossed aside, especially in tech. The growth is so fast, exponential, that what was cutting edge last year is considered a relic today, and instead of fixing or repurposing, we just throw it away. But Bertha, she deserved better. So my next move was finding a Linux distribution that Bertha could handle, realistically and efficiently, given how ancient her tech is. I couldn't throw something too fancy at her. That'd be like asking a 70-year-old woman to deadlift a whole ass car. What I could do was find something lightweight, like a styrofoam replica of a car, so she could still deadlift it, and it'd still be fun and impressive. Before I go full Linux wizard, let's take a quick step back. So every computer needs something called an operating system, or OS. It's basically what the brain is to the personality. Windows, Mac OS, and even your phone's iOS or Android are all operating systems. They tell the computer how to do stuff and let you interact with it without speaking in robot, ones and zeros. Now Linux is like the punk rock version of all that. It's open source, customizable, and has a million different flavors called distributions, or distros if you want to sound cool at a tech meetup. Some distros are sleek and modern, some are bare bones and fast, some are made for hacking satellites or running on literal toasters. Since Bertha's got the horsepower of a polite elderly cat, I couldn't go with the bloated modern distro. I need something super lightweight that can still do basic tasks without setting her on fire. Enter Lubuntu. It's a version of Linux that's made to run on low spec machines, but still has enough style to make Bertha feel like she's in her prime again. After settling on Lubuntu as Bertha's perfect match, it was time to make the magic happen. That meant downloading the OS installer on a flash drive from my main PC and plugging it into Bertha to wipe her crusty old Mac OS soul and give her a fresh start. But there was one problem. I didn't have a USB stick, and since the budget for this project was exactly $0, I had to get creative. So I pulled the old Amazon special. I bought a USB drive, used it for a few hours, and returned it with no regrets. Sorry, Jeff, except I'm not sorry. You are an evil man. And you're bald. I hadn't used a USB drive in like 12 years, and let's be real, I probably won't again. They feel like ancient relics now. Like, if you handed one to a Gen Alpha kid, they'd probably try to vape it. After getting that USB stick, I set Bertha to boot from it and got to work. The install took about an hour, nothing wild, but when it finished and I ran through through the initial setup, something clicked. She was alive. Bertha had been officially reborn, baptized. And then I hit another wall. She couldn't connect to the Wi-Fi, but my cousin Isaac was kind enough to buy me a USB Wi-Fi adapter. This made her connect to the Wi-Fi, and it would be the first of many roadblocks. The next one was a little harder to overcome. I had no idea how to use Linux, so I called in my expert, ChatGPT. At first, it was like having a personal Linux wizard guiding me step by step, but eventually, even ChatGPT threw up its hands and said, I don't know, bro, good luck. My main goals were simple. 1. Get Spotify running. 2. Install a music visualizer of some kind. 3. Profit. The first one, a nightmare. The official Spotify app for Linux just would not run on Bertha. No matter how many shady GitHub forums I spelunk through, Bertha could just not handle the Spotify app. After 4 whole days of head-smashing frustration, I almost gave up and let Bertha go back to sleep forever. But instead, I adapted, so I logged in and dove into the command console. I learned just enough Linux source tree to install Google Chrome manually. That way, I could at least run Spotify through their web browser. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. And that little victory, it tasted like crack cocaine in the 80s. With Spotify now reliably running on Bertha, I let myself celebrate, briefly, because now came the next quest, the music visualizer. I dug around and found a few options. The first was Project M, which looked dope until I tried running it. Bertha said absolutely not, and it was just too much. She wheezed, she choked, she gave me the digital equivalent of an old lady swatting me with a chancla. So I pivoted, and I found a terminal-based visualizer called Kava. Simple, clean, and, most importantly, it actually ran. I got it installed and added some colors because the default was straight up black and white, and I just vibed out for a little bit. But it felt kinda underwhelming. Like, yeah, it worked, but it wasn't sick, it wasn't impressive. So then came more digging. That's when I stumbled across a terminal filter called Retro, this gritty VHS style effect that looked straight out of a CRT fever dream. I slapped it on and boom, Bertha exploded, burning my house down. Okay, not actually, but she may as well have. Running Google Chrome, Spotify, Kava, and Retro at the same time turned her into a molasses machine, completely unusable. I tried everything. ChatGPT, no help. DeepSeek, nada. GitHub, full of lies and disappointment. I was right back at square one. All that work, and it felt like I was gonna have to pack Bertha up and send her back to the garage retirement home. A whole last week passed. Bertha just sat there in my living room like the ghost of unfinished dreams. I was mentally fried. I had poured over 12 hours into this thing just to get her to barely function, like an old car that only turns on if you pray and kick it just in the right spot. Total waste of time, or so I thought. Then I had another idea. Either the sunk cost fallacy kicked in, or the indomitable human spirit did, because I said screw it and opened Reddit. I posted on r/Lubuntu asking why Bertha was running slower than a Game Boy in a microwave, and then a voice from heaven blessed me with her keyboard.
Is this a live system or is it installed? Live systems are for testing and run compressed on RAM, so they're slow. Also, if you have less than 6 gigabytes of RAM, you need to adjust your swap space or your machine will lag like crazy.
Now I know that just sounds like a wall of technobabble, so let me break it down for my fellow regular human beings. A live system is basically like running Bertha off a glorified demo disc, not built for speed, just for test driving. An installed system actually installed onto the hard drive. This is what I should have done from the jump. And lastly, a swap file. When your computer runs out of RAM, it starts borrowing space from the hard drive. If your swap space is too small, everything gets real janky, real fast. So Bertha wasn't actually broken. She was just being forced to operate with no room to breathe, like trying to sprint while wearing a corset made of bricks. I followed the wise Reddit monk's advice and changed the swap/partition settings to give Bertha more elbow room. And guess what? She actually started working now. Thank you, username Gwyverk? I don't know how to say it, but thank you, whoever you are. She began to work as her creators, Steve Jobs and I, had intended. Everything was going great. I started to feel real proud of myself with what felt like my anti-consumer art project. I was playing all my favorite songs on Bertha to see how the sound waves move. Music carries energy. Now I could see it. Pitch, harmony, everything. I was having fun, and I put on my buddy's SoundCloud mix to see it visualized, and then tragedy struck. This guy put so much bass in his songs that his music absolutely demolished Bertha's internal speakers, making them nigh unusable. I was fucking livid. All that work pissed down the drain, and for what? I let myself feel the anger and then calm down. After a while, I went to my thinking room, and I came out with a new idea. I could just find some external speakers for Bertha, upgrading her sound system and making lemonade out of these piss yellow lemons. So I scoured the internet for speakers that would suit Bertha, and I found out that Apple made an iPod home speaker in the early 2000s. There was one in my city for $50 on offer, and I absolutely had to have it, and immediately went to go get it. I came back, plugged her in, and it didn't work. Of course it didn't. Why would it? Why would it be so easy? I was so pissed. Another setback. After all that work, it was like nothing had changed. My hopes were dashed once again. I didn't waste any time feeling bad for myself. I installed every audio driver I could onto Bertha, got a new aux cord, and voila, she worked perfectly. I looked at my creation with the most pride I felt in years. She was beautiful. Bertha works great as both a sound system and as a decorative piece. I bought some stickers and plastered the front of her. Got this Lego record player. I didn't stop there. I installed Bluetooth drivers so that the Apple mouse and keyboard could work wirelessly and clear up the clutter. The mouse worked, but the keyboard didn't want to cooperate. I spent like 5 hours trying everything I could think of to get it working, only to realize the internal Bluetooth receiver of the keyboard was somehow fried. Apple keyboards are like $100 and I wasn't about to spend that. So I closed the chapter on Bertha for now. She sits at home and I turn her on when I cook or have guests over. She looks really cool. She's a testament to my big old brain and my resilience. Even when things go wrong, I can always find a way to make it work. I do have next steps for Bertha. My friend, whose music absolutely wrecked her, came over and taught me how to use 3D modeling software. I have this cool vision now, building a wooden display for Bertha to live inside, modeled after a retro 1960s style TV set. The whole theme of this project has always been retro, recycling, and anti-consumerism, and now it feels like Bertha could belong in a modern art museum. There are a ton of issues with this idea though. First of all, I've got this idea stuck in my head that I would want the wood to come from a fallen tree in nature that I then chop to stay true to the theme. Seems like it could be pretty difficult though. And then there's the fact that I know jack shit about woodworking. I barely passed a semester of it in high school with a C. But I'm empowered by overcoming obstacles. I'm determined to try my best at this and figure it out. My uncle has a ton of tools in his garage, so I've got the space, the tools, my buddy's got a chainsaw. I will make a video on this if and when I do it. All I need now is to find a tree, and then trial and error my way into becoming a professional woodworker. I mean, how hard could it possibly be? Even though this whole process was stressful, I honestly loved it. It gave me the perfect mix of technical challenge and creative expression, and weirdly enough, the momentum from finishing Bertha has spiraled into other parts of my life. Starting a YouTube channel, cooking more often, just moving in a more positive direction overall. I've always loved technology. I just wish it could exist in better harmony with nature. But projects like this help me imagine that balance. I know that if younger me saw this, saw the fact that I built this thing, and that I also use a computer I proudly named the Bat Computer, he'd be so hyped. Part of the reason I like Bertha so much is because no one else on this planet has a setup like her. I do not believe in gatekeeping though, but go ahead and make your own if you like. The moral of the story, chase your passions. Connect with your inner child. Don't be afraid to learn something new, even in areas you think you already know well. Growth is waiting in the unexpected, and sometimes your biggest wins come from just saying, screw it, I'll try. Logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere. Albert Einstein.